The day after my mom's funeral, my stepmother asked about the money. Not about me, not about how I was doing. Just the inheritance. For $100,000. She looked at me like it was already hers and said, "We need to figure out how this is going to be handled." Handled. Like my mom's entire life could be reduced to a number. I didn't argue. I didn't react. Because there was one thing she didn't know. My mom had already seen this coming. And she didn't leave anything to chance. So when her lawyer walked into that room the next day, everything she thought she could take was about to disappear. My mom was the kind of person who never left things unfinished. She planned everything down to the smallest detail. Bills, documents, schedules, even things most people wouldn't think about until it was too late. At the time, I thought she was just being careful. Now I know she was being prepared, especially when it came to my stepmother. She came into our lives a few years before my mom passed. On the surface, she was kind, supportive, always saying the right things at the right time. But there was something about her that never felt genuine. It wasn't obvious. It was subtle. The way she'd casually bring up finances in conversations. The way she asked questions that sounded innocent, but weren't. Have you thought about your long-term assets? Do you have everything organized? At the time, it felt like concern. Looking back, it felt like calculation. My dad didn't notice. Or maybe he just didn't want to. He liked having someone there. Someone who made things easier. And my mom? She never confronted her. Never caused a scene. But she paid attention. To everything. I remember one night, months before she passed, she sat me down. No drama. No fear. Just calm. "If anything ever feels off," she said, "call my lawyer." That was it. No explanation. I didn't think much of it at the time. I wish I had. Because now, sitting in that quiet house, hearing my stepmother talk about money like it belonged to her, I realized something. My mom didn't say that for no reason. She saw something coming. Something I didn't. And now, it was already happening. The house still smelled like flowers from the funeral. Too many of them. They were everywhere, on the table, by the window, even near the hallway where my mom used to sit in the evenings. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. It felt empty. I was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing in particular when I heard her footsteps. Slow, confident. Not hesitant. Not careful. Just certain. She walked into the room like nothing had changed. Like the last 24 hours hadn't happened. "We should talk," she said. No softness. No sympathy. Just business. I looked up at her confused. About what? She crossed her arms lightly, leaning against the doorway like this was a normal conversation. "Your mom's assets," she replied. "The inheritance." The word hit harder than I expected. Inheritance. Like everything my mom had worked for, everything she left behind, was just something to divide up. "It's not even been a day," I said quietly. She didn't react. Didn't apologize. "That's exactly why we need to get ahead of it," she said. "Things like this can get complicated." We. That word again. Like she was already part of something she didn't belong to. I felt my jaw tighten. "There's nothing complicated," I said. She had everything planned. For a split second, her expression shifted. Then it went right back to controlled. "Planned doesn't always mean fair," she replied. Fair. Now she was talking about fairness. I let out a slow breath, trying to stay calm. "What exactly are you saying?" She stepped closer this time. Not aggressive, but deliberate. "I'm saying," she began, "that as your father's wife, I'm part of this family. And decisions like this should involve everyone." Everyone. It almost sounded reasonable. Almost. But there was something underneath it. Something sharper. "She left that money for me," I said, more firmly now. "That's your interpretation," she replied. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't about discussion anymore. This was about control. She wasn't asking. She was positioning herself. Testing how far she could push. And the worst part? My dad was right there. Standing in the hallway. Listening. Not saying a word. No support. No correction. Just silence. Which somehow made it worse. Because silence didn't feel neutral. It felt like agreement. I looked at both of them for a second. Really looked. And for the first time since my mom passed, I didn't just feel grief. I felt something else. Something colder. Because in that moment, it became painfully clear. She wasn't mourning. She was calculating. And if I didn't do something, she was going to take everything my mom left behind. Like it was always hers to begin with. I didn't argue with her. Not right then. Because something about the way she spoke, it felt prepared. Like she had already played this conversation out in her head and expected it to go her way. So instead of reacting, I just nodded once. "We'll see," I said. And that seemed to satisfy her. At least for the moment. But over the next few days, things changed. She didn't drop it. She pushed it. Subtly at first. Little comments during breakfast. Casual mentions when relatives called. Always phrased like concern, but aimed like pressure. "We just want to make sure everything is handled fairly. Your mom wouldn't want conflict over money." It sounded reasonable. That was the problem. Because the more she said it, the more it started to sound like the truth. Like I'd be the difficult one if I disagreed. And my dad? He stayed quiet. He'd nod sometimes, avoid eye contact, change the subject. But he never once said, "That's not yours." Not once. And that silence started to feel louder than anything she said. Like he had already picked a side without saying it out loud. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her. It was about both of them. About how far they were willing to go and how far I was willing to let them. I went back to my room that night and just sat there for a while. Thinking. Replaying everything. The way she spoke. The way he stayed quiet. And then, I remembered. My mom. Her voice. Calm. Certain. "If anything ever feels off, call my lawyer." At the time, it felt like a small detail. Now, it felt like a warning. Like she knew this moment was coming. I got up, walked over to my desk, and found the card she gave me. Still exactly where I left it. Name. Number. Simple. Clear. I stared at it for a second, then picked up my phone. Because if my mom had already prepared for this, then I wasn't going to handle it alone. I made the call. And just like that, everything started to shift. The meeting was set for the next morning. My stepmother insisted on being there. So did my dad. We sat across from each other in a quiet office, clean, minimal, everything in its place. Unlike the tension in the room, she looked confident, composed. Like this was just another conversation she was about to control. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Because this time, I wasn't the one leading it. The lawyer walked in a few minutes later. Calm, professional, focused. He greeted us briefly, took his seat, and opened a folder. No small talk. No build-up. Just straight to the point. "Your mother left very clear instructions," he said. My stepmother leaned forward slightly. "Yes, and we'd like to discuss how those assets will be distributed within the family." The lawyer didn't react. Didn't even look up right away. He just turned a page. "There's nothing to discuss," he said evenly. That was the first shift. Her expression tightened. "I'm sorry." He slid a document across the desk toward me, but angled so everyone could see. "The inheritance $400,000 is secured in a protected account. Sole beneficiary, you." Silence. Not confusion. Shock. My stepmother picked up the paper quickly, scanning it like she expected something different to appear. "This doesn't make sense," she said, a little faster now. As his wife, "You have no legal claim," the lawyer interrupted calmly. That stopped her. Completely. My dad finally spoke, his voice uncertain. "What does that mean, exactly?" The lawyer turned to him. "It means the funds cannot be accessed, shared, or influenced by anyone other than the designated beneficiary." He paused. Just enough. Then added, "By design." That word landed hard. By design. This wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a loophole. It was intentional. My stepmother leaned back slightly, her confidence slipping. "There has to be some flexibility," she said, trying to regain control. "We're family." The lawyer finally looked directly at her. "Your mother anticipated this exact situation," he said. Another document slid across the desk. "Any attempt to challenge or interfere with this inheritance triggers immediate legal action." That was it. That was the moment everything broke. Because now, it wasn't just unavailable. It was untouchable. Legally protected. And suddenly, she wasn't in control anymore. For a moment, no one moved. The room felt still, like everything had just paused. My stepmother stared at the documents in her hands, reading the same lines over and over like they might change. They didn't. Her grip tightened slightly. This isn't right, she said, her voice thinner now. Not confident. Not controlled. Just shaken. We're married, she added quickly, looking at my dad. That has to count for something. But even she didn't sound convinced anymore. The lawyer didn't raise his voice. Didn't argue. He just responded, calm and final. It doesn't. One sentence. That was all it took. Because there was nothing emotional about it. Nothing to debate. Just facts. My dad shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable now. He looked between the lawyer and her, like he was trying to figure out where he stood. But there was no space left to stand in. No gray area. Just a line that had already been drawn. And he was on the outside of it. My stepmother leaned back slowly, like the weight of everything had finally caught up with her. The control she thought she had. The outcome she expected. It was never real. It had all been decided long before this moment. By someone who saw through everything. I stayed quiet. Watched it all unfold. Because there was nothing left for me to prove. My mom had already done that. Every document. Every clause. Every detail. It wasn't just protection. It was precision. She didn't leave room for doubt. Or manipulation. Or pressure. She closed every door before anyone could even try to open one. And now, they were finally seeing it. Not through words, but through consequences. My stepmother placed the papers back on the table slowly. Carefully. Like they might break if she moved too fast. But it wasn't the paper that broke. It was the idea she walked in with. The belief that she could take something that was never hers. Gone. Completely. The lawyer closed the folder with a soft click. And in that quiet sound, everything was settled. Not by me. Not by her. But by the one person who had already seen this coming. And made sure it ended exactly like this. The meeting ended without another word. No arguments. No raised voices. Just silence. The kind that settles in when there's nothing left to fight for. My stepmother stood up first. Slow. Controlled. But different. The confidence she walked in with, it was gone. Replaced with something quieter. Something uncertain. She didn't look at me as she walked out. Didn't say anything. Because there was nothing left she could say. My dad followed a few seconds later. Still quiet. Still avoiding eye contact. Like he wasn't sure where he stood anymore. And for the first time, I didn't wait for him to explain. Because I didn't need it. I stayed back for a moment, just looking at the folder on the table. At the signatures. The clauses. The careful planning behind every page. And I realized something. My mom didn't just leave me money. She left me protection. She saw what I couldn't. Prepared for what I didn't expect. And made sure no one could take advantage of me, even after she was gone. I took a slow breath, stood up, and walked out of that office. And for the first time since she passed, I didn't feel powerless. I felt secure. Because some people leave behind memories. But my mom left behind the truth. And that truth? It protected me exactly when I needed it most.